Um, okay, and I'm gonna hand over to Andy, and I'm gonna mute myself because there's definitely gonna be some crying babies and chaos at bedtime. So, Andy, over to you, sir, and thank you for being here. If you need anything, just ask, and I'll come off mute.
Fantastic. Ian, thank you. Thanks for all of you who are tuning in live and who may be watching after the fact here. I understand it's spring break. Um, what I want to talk about as Ian prefaced is breathing. And the reason that we're going to talk about breathing is because either we are or we know a player who looks great in practice but really struggles to take their game to the course. Right? It's the one who works on all the right things. They check all the boxes. At core, you have the opportunity to check all of those boxes, whether it be on the range, with your short game, in the gym, nutrition, equipment. You get it, right? But those same players often struggle to pull it all together when it comes time, you know, to put a score on a scorecard. That player was me. And so being a little bit vulnerable here, consistently working on all of the right things, really only to experience very inconsistent results until I learned how to breathe better. And as Ian kind of prefaced, now you might already be saying, like, breathing, we breathe every minute of every day. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal as players, if we're not breathing properly, we're missing the link that essentially helps a player get out of their own way and play the golf that we all know that they're capable of. So to kind of drive that point home a little bit further, sharing a quick story, I was in the end of my fifth year playing on PGA Tour Canada, then PGA Tour Americas now, and I found myself in a really familiar position where I was poring over the order of merit towards the end of the season, essentially crunching the numbers and trying to figure out who were the guys I needed to beat in order to keep my card for the next season. And week in and week out, I was missing cuts. And if I made a cut, it was just barely on the number. I was losing money. I was tired. I was frustrated because I knew I could beat the guys that were routinely finishing ahead of me each week. And what was adding fuel to the fire is I had read all of the best selling mental performance books and sports psychologists, and even had the opportunity to work with some of those individuals who wrote them. And so I knew what I needed to do as a player, but nothing changed when I stood on to the first tee. And now that story may sound familiar, whether you're the parent observing your junior, or you're the junior tuning in here and know that you're putting in all the right work. But when you step on to the golf course, things don't look and feel the same. You can be that player who's ready to dominate at the next level, but gets in their own way when you have an opportunity to prove it. And so, regardless of who you are, we can all share in that collective frustration, knowing that these players are capable of more. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to be that way. And so, the moment everything changed for me was when my coach, Charlie Vandenberg, he's a PGA Master professional from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I'm from, introduced me to this company called NeuroPeak Pro, who did precision breathing training. Now, I was skeptical, and so they ran a few assessments on me using some, new technology that I had not seen before, but I was really intrigued by. And the conclusion was that I was breathing wrong. You know, Unaware that I could be breathing wrong and essentially lived to tell about it. But what the results had showed was that my body was in a constant state of stress just because of the way I was breathing. And no matter how hard I tried, or no matter what I did to commit to my routine, visualize the golf shot, trust my swing, have fun, I was firmly putting myself in my own way just because of how I was breathing. And so all of that prep and stress was having its way with me even before I had an opportunity to put a tee in the ground. So why does this happen? Right? Why do we so often struggle as athletes, as just human beings, to execute what we know we can do when it really matters to us? And the short answer here is unfortunately really simple. It's in our DNA. Whether we like it or not, and I know Ian speaks of this often, our bodies do exactly what they're programmed to do when the brain senses danger. What happens is our fight or flight response gets activated. And we, as athletes, as golfers, start to experience that as increased muscle tension. We start to see our shoulders kind of riding high. We might have cold, sweaty hands. Certainly, our heart rate goes up. We feel that tightness in the pit of our stomach. And yes, we also start breathing faster too. And the reason why all of this happens is because of a part of our body, if you allow me just to dip into the science for a moment, is the autonomic nervous system. And what it does is it controls all of the involuntary processes in our body. It's just like the adaptive cruise control on a car. And that's the graphic that I have up here. An example of that is when we walk outside on a hot day, we don't have to tell our pores to open up and sweat to cool down because it senses the environment and elicits an automatic response. And so, conversely, too, when we walk back into the air conditioning, our pores close. And like all of this happens without a conscious thought. The problem is that while that response is great for navigating life or death situations, it's disastrous for the fine motor skills and focus, which we absolutely need to play great golf. And so, worse yet, unless we actively address that survival response in our body remains activated long after that initial stressor has passed. Right? So what it does is it creates the perfect environment for essentially stressor upon stressor to build up and ultimately take us down. The fact that the autonomic nervous system, that our body is continuously prioritizing its survival over peak performance, is why every single one of us as coaches, parents, and even players have either witnessed or full experienced that moment that could have been, right? That shared frustration that happens because the stress of the moment hijacks the body when all we want to do as golfers is just play well. Ultimately, what's trying to happen in the autonomic nervous system is the body's trying to find balance, or what the body thinks is the appropriate physiological response for the actual situation that it's in. In golf, or even just peak performance in general, we often refer to that as the zone. And so I think I can safely assume here that we've all experienced or witnessed a player in the zone as well, where the game is just effortless, right? Shots are on target and we putted the lights out. It's an incredible feeling, but it's also incredibly elusive. And we do just about anything we can to recreate the situation that allowed us to enter into that zone-like state. And so what I'm here to share tonight is that what if there was a bridge, or better yet, an opportunity to close the gap between playing golf in a constant state of stress where we're continually underperforming versus one of being in the zone when we start to realize our absolute full potential. Now, I want you to take a look at this here. This is an example. This is a recording of an individual's breathing and their cardiovascular system in stress. What you're seeing here on the screen, the blue line is the individual's breathing pattern. So every inhale, that blue line and dot is going up, and every exhale, it's coming down. The red line is their heart rate, and particularly their heart rate variability. What I want you to see here is notice how the heart really struggles to align with the individual's breathing. The reason that this is happening is because this individual here is breathing at about 19 and a half breaths per minute. And so this lack of synchronicity, this lack of balance in the nervous system is what happens under stress. So it's more than just high heart rate. It's more that critical relationship, if you will, between the heart and the breath. And it's this disconnect that you're seeing here is precisely why players need to learn how to breathe better. Because of all of the functions of that autonomic nervous system, that cruise control of our body, breathing is the only one that you can control. And it also happens to be the only one that has the ability to influence the autonomic nervous system in return, which essentially puts you back in control of the situation, regardless of what's on the line here. And this works, scientifically shown, because breathing works like a metronome to pace the nervous system, right? Just like we use a metronome to work on our rhythm of our putting stroke, our breathing acts as a metronome for our entire physiology and every physiological system connected to it, including the brain. But when we are stressed, bringing this video back up here, and we're breathing quickly, the rapid tick tock pace of our breath sends a signal to our brain that we need to be up for something. Even when that's a 3-footer that you've made 1,000 times, but just because something is on the line, it becomes and feels like the most important shot you've hit all day. And so this is why we've all been told countless times to relax, take a deep breath. And so what we often see is, but that breath, that big, dramatic, chest-filled breath where the shoulders rise up is wrong. And it's wrong because you're absolutely whiffing on the first domino that needs to fall to start to pull the body out of fight or flight. However, when you intentionally slow your breathing, the more rhythmic tick tock pace sends an equally powerful signal back to the nervous system that, again, regardless of how your brain and all of your senses are perceiving that environment, you can move into a state where you can relax, settle in, and perform the way that you've practiced. And so noticing this screen recording here of an individual, notice how closely the heart rate, that red line, is following the breath. They're in sync, they're in balance. And this is a really strong indicator of a very well regulated nervous system that's capable of handling whatever gets thrown at it. And so when the heart and breath are working together like this, we move into that state of calm. We're in a spot where we can respond effectively to the unexpected or recover quickly after it. And whether that's a shot that suddenly feels more important than any other one we've hit today, or, a surprise, an unexpected setback, or just, a bad break. And now this is the state, as Ian mentioned, this is the state I've built my career on helping players achieve. And I'm really excited to be here to be able to share a little bit with you. And I want to take this a little bit more interactive here. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to put one hand on your stomach, kind of right over your navel. You can see the picture of me doing this here. And I'd really like you to focus on slowly inhaling through your nose and doing it in a way that only allows your belly to expand. So your chest and your shoulders are staying really, really still. Just kind of feel that belly fill up. And I want you to exhale slowly through the nose again, kind of allowing that belly to contract. And so the air is moving up and out of the lungs. And I want you to try that, just a couple of times here. Essentially allowing your belly to fill up like a balloon and then slowly exhaling. And now, as you're focusing on your own breath, when you're properly activating your diaphragm, when you're properly activating the muscles around the core that are designed to support proper breathing, you're not going to see any of this upper chest movement. You're not going to see that big, dramatic, deep breath that you see some players take. So, after you do a couple of cycles like that, that's diaphragmatic breathing. It's not difficult, but it is the foundation of performance under pressure. It calms the nervous system, it sharpens your focus, and ultimately helps you get out of your own way. Digging a little bit deeper here, just remember that every breath you take sends a powerful signal to your brain about the environment that you're in. That rapid, shallow breathing at 19 and a half breaths per minute is sending a constant signal to the brain that you're in danger and it's keeping you in that state of high alert, whether it's necessary or not. But conversely, that slow, steady breathing sends a message of safety, which essentially allows your body to relax, find a state of balance. And so, yes, it's about the pace of its breathing, but you can also see in those two pictures side by side, it's about consistent depth. It's about
Kind of
equal
makes
rhythm.
sense, right? Like when you're nervous or
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And that's the piece of our body automatically breathing faster. We don't have to think about breathing faster when we're under stress because our body is trying to shift into an appropriate response for what it senses the environment to be. But again, if you put conscious effort to your breath, you can control it. You can't think your heart rate lower. And so when we do that, it helps move the body into the calm, focused state where peak performance becomes possible. Now, this is a little bit more in depth of an exercise here, and I'm going to just put this in motion here. Kind of feeling that same feeling again, but now we start to add some pace to it. And now what you're seeing on the screen here is a symmetrical breathing pattern. It's a 4-second inhale, a 1-second transition over the top, a 4-second exhale, and then a 1-second transition into the next breath. That puts us at 6 breaths per minute. When we measure all of our clients, the average respiration rate is between 15 and 18 breaths per minute. That's 2 to 3 times faster than what the body needs to be able to find that state of balance. Now, everybody's unique, but for the most part, if we get someone close to 6 breaths per minute, we're going to start to see some of those effects that we saw with that alignment between the breathing and the heart. And if you've never breathed this way, it's going to feel very different. It's going to feel very slow. But just like everything we do, it takes a little bit of practice. It takes the right feedback, just like we're making a swing change or working on your putting stroke. Any of your coaches are going to be able to say, hey, I need you at this position at the top of your golf swing, and you're good enough athletes, you're great players that you're going to be able to get there. But it's going to take a lot of conscious effort to do it. And that's why we practice. And that's why so many players have started to implement and add a breathing routine to their training because they know it's the difference between them being able to show up when it matters most. And so, as that pattern, as that pacer continues to play here, you might be feeling a little bit of a shift here. And what's happening there, that's your body simply responding to a deliberate cue, and you can elicit a change that fast, regardless of how your brain is sensing the environment. I don't know if you saw or caught the press conference after Rory won the Masters. You know, there was a question where a reporter asked, like, how were you feeling on the first tee? And he was pretty open about it. He was like, I had that feeling in the pit of my stomach. My legs were wobbly. I couldn't eat. The stakes were high, certainly. But if you also caught, there was another interview where Rory talks about how all he focused on was breathing through his nose. That's all he did. And there was some commentary even afterwards of how Bryson even said Rory wasn't talking. That's because breathing and talking are two things that you can't do at the same time. So, like I said, changing your breathing is just like making a swing change or working on your putting stroke. It requires that conscious effort to unwind years of bad breathing so that we can reawaken the muscles that we're supposed to use. And as coaches, as players and parents, this meaningful change requires practice, the right feedback, and some time, some patience, because it's not always going to be easy, but the payoff is worth it because what's awkward today just needs to become and can become your new normal tomorrow. And when you do learn to do this, I think you're going to quickly realize that you're able to unlock that calmer, more focused, zone like state essentially on demand, whether that's on the golf course or in the classroom. And so, in addition to the nervous system balance, we also talk about lower back and spine stability, overall fluidity of movement. If the body's stressed, movements become less fluid. And so, breathing supports not only the physiological side, but the physical just as well. You know, Ian mentioned my work with Jordan Spieth. I've been fortunate to work with Jordan for almost 4 years now. Um, and he just flat out says, breathing's a scientific way to help you get out of fight or flight into the zone. Um, Bryson, he talks about the performance training for his brain is just important as training his body. Madeline Sagstrom, she just won on the LPGA last week. Talked about how incorporating breathing helped her to stay present and focus one shot at a time. I think those are two things that we as players know we should do, but it just becomes really hard to do it when when we're stressed and it's time to put a score on the scorecard. Um, Keegan Bradley, you know, the results, lower stress, deeper sleep, higher focus, and better golf under pressure. And, Keegan, he ended up, you know, ending a 100 start winless streak. Um, and he's won on tour, every year since. And so I just, while players are competing, they're trying to make the high school golf team, they're trying to get noticed by college coaches. Um, this is essentially for every player, regardless of where they're playing or where they're trying to go. And the proof is essentially in the numbers, right? We can measure it. You can see it visually with the way that the Intel belt measures it, but the players, and we can feel the change, just like you felt that kind of deliberate shift in the body when we just slowed our breathing down for a few seconds. But when we can start to pair that up with some visuals, um, interactive training, we can start to see results show up on the scorecard, usually in a matter of weeks, which I think is really cool. Staying with Keegan here for a second, and I'll put this video in motion. Keegan runs his breathing sessions in the car before he plays every day. When you see Keegan as part of his pre-shot, putting his hand on his belly, you now know exactly what he's doing. He's giving himself an active reminder to breathe before every shot. And we all know Keegan um, struggled for a bit, but he's certainly found a sweet spot now, and um, is going to be captaining the Ryder Cup team this fall, which is pretty awesome, and arguably one of the most pressure-packed environments and any golfer will ever face, regardless if you're a player or a captain. Give you kind of one more quick example here of what this starts to look like in action. This is Austin Truslow. Austin plays in Asia. He finished 44th on the Order of Merit last year. He's done a lot of work with the Intel belt with his coach. And what I want you to see here, he's talking through this shot with his caddy, and you can see his balance number here. That red number's at 46. So he's fairly stressed. He's out playing a practice round. They're walking. It's hot. Um, but notice as he starts to get into his routine here, starts to do some rehearsal swings, he's starting to get into his breath. And that balance begins to build, and he's going to take a really good intentional breath behind the ball before he walks in. And you can see how quickly that balance number, that stress and anti-stress number, if you will, that started out in the 20s is now in the 90s by the time he steps over the golf ball. And so when he's over the golf ball, he's not thinking about his breath. He's into his shot because he can, because he's practiced his breathing, and he hits, a really good one here. And I just think this is a really great visual of how a body can go from stress into a state of balance, fairly quickly. And side story, I was working with a Division I player, Division I college player, really was having a hard time getting past the first tee. His heart rate was just kind of out of control. His hands were shaking. He could hardly get the ball on the tee, and he wasn't making his travel team. And so what we did with him, one of the things is kind of my non-negotiable. We added 10 minutes of daily breathing to his weekly practice schedule. And not only did his game change, and he secured an elusive spot, or what was an elusive spot on his travel team. The part of the story I love, he boosted his GPA because he used his golf breathing to overcome test anxiety. And he certainly appreciated that because he did better on his chem final than he anticipated. But his coach and his parents were probably more excited about the test score than even making the travel team. So I know you guys are all working on a lot. You already have so much on your plate, and you're kind of asking yourself, like, how big of a lift is this to start to add into my training with working with your coaches, school, and everything else that's on your plate. Learning another skill or some new technology can feel overwhelming, and that's why it's my goal to really help make this process really simple, really effective, and impactful for all the players that I work with. And so to do this, in addition to that exercise that we did earlier with hand on belly, I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of a preview into what this looks like. And so we did a little bit of it earlier, just starting the conversation, whether you're the player, the parent, or the coach, just asking the question, do you ever notice how you're breathing on the golf course? Or, how does your breathing change under pressure? And the reason I ask this is because players don't realize when they're getting fast. But from an external perspective, we can all see it, right? We start walking faster, talking faster, swinging faster, and those are all signs that the nervous system is in overdrive. The second is starting to take it to the course. Now, I'm not saying take it on the golf course. Like Jordan, he runs his 10 minutes before leaving for the golf course. You saw Keegan in that little video clip. He runs his 10 minutes of breathing once he gets to the course while he's still in his car. Every player's unique in that way, But for the players that I coach, and if you take anything away from this session, 10 minutes of pre-round breathing is a non-negotiable. And you just have to build it in to your pre-round routine. And third, make it easy. I start with, three keys to better breathing. It's posture, it's muscle control, it's pace, and just using that simple 4141 method from earlier helps you get comfortable with controlled breathing. And the reason why we want to make it easy is because I often hear players asked to do, complicated multi-phased breathing techniques to help them relax. And, it could be box breathing, it could be extended holds, 4-7-8 patterns. The science behind those is proven, but they can do more harm than good because the individual is not physiologically ready for those more advanced techniques. It's just like asking a high handicapper, excuse me, to hit a low fade. There's just foundational skills that are needed first. The on-course application comes later once an individual shows me that they know how to breathe. And that's when we can kind of install those cheat codes that get unlocked. So when that player knows how to control their breathing, they then are in a position to be able to add in the concepts and the techniques to help them manage stress while they're on the golf course. And so the takeaway or the giveaway, if you will, that I'm gonna leave you all tonight with is this three keys to better breathing for golf. Scan the QR code. You can also go to golfbreathing.com. Um, because the truth is, in my experience, players are never going to reach their full potential until they learn to manage pressure. And that starts with how they breathe. And so that guide is more than just a guide. It's really the first lesson or the first two or three lessons even that I cover with players.
Andy, I think we lost your sound there for a few seconds, or I at least I did.
Are we good?
We're back. We're back. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, the long or the short is I end up keeping my card that year, just barely, but all I did in the off season was work on my breathing. And I went from finishing like 68th on the money list to 10th the next year, thanks to a few top tens. I ultimately won the year after, earned Corn Ferry Tour status, all because of how I incorporated breathing into my pre-shot. So, in closing here, are you that player who looks great in practice but struggles to take it to the golf course? You know, Learn how to breathe better. It starts with mastering your breathing, and I'd love to be able to help you in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. So just I'll quickly say, especially for the parents that are on this, this is not new information to the kids. That's why I love it so much. They have literally been taught 4-1-4-1 breathing into the diaphragm purely because I was keeping it simple because I didn't understand any of the other breath work. This was the one that I just felt made the most sense. And then I meet Andy and he supports that. Um, so I really feel very, very, very passionate about getting the students onto this. They are being taught it, but I think if we can, as a community, invest in the belt, invest in the app, have kids doing this 10 minutes a day. I really feel it can help the kids reach their full potential, which is our mission on the golf course as well as off the golf course. Um, at KOHR, we value evidence-led coaching. There's no debate about this. This is as evidence-led research papers coming out your ears on this, that this helps health and well-being as well as sports performance. And the other thing, the other one of the values that I want to mention is transformational leadership. We're not going to ask the kids to do anything we're not doing. I have my own band. I'm going to download and start doing this on a daily basis as part of my gym routine. My wife actually already does this. She does it without the belt. She does it through yoga. Um, Other coaches will be encouraged to do the same. I know that as parents who pay for core, you're already heavily invested. So for those that don't want to invest, we are going to buy some communal belts that kids can sign out and borrow. There'll only be about two or three of those. They might go quick. So if you are okay investing a little more in your child's development, there's a lot of times that people are searching for new wedges, new shafts, new golf balls, new golf bag, the latest swag. This might be something to push up the list and sacrifice one of those other things. Um, Andy, I appreciate it. We're going to share this recording. Any parents can email me or reach out to me as well if you have further questions. But scanning the QR code, getting the app, starting this process, I think is a great way. Was there a code created for Core, Andy, or
There is not, and what I'll do quickly is I will create one. And actually, what one of the best things to do is have Ian pass my contact information on, but also just as easy in that guide. Um, there's a link to throw 20 minutes on my calendar. So if you have more questions about how it all works, how it's going to integrate with the work that your players are already doing at Core, I'm happy to share 20 minutes and dive into that more.
awesome? And we'll send the recording of this out probably tomorrow, Friday, and I'll make sure that Andy, if you send me an email so I can cut and paste those details, that would be the
Yep,
best way. Um, Andy,
perfect.
thank you very much. Joey,
Thank you all.
over to you. I'm sure actually Andy and Joey, you might want to connect as well, but further down the line. That would be a great connection. So Andy, I'm going to mute you now. If you need to duck out, please feel free. If you want to stay again, feel free. Um, Joey, how do we want to
Yep.
do this? I think Andy managed to take control of the screen. Do you know how to do that?
Um, I don't know if I know how to take control. I sent Brandon my slides. I don't know if
I've got them. I've also got a 12
okay,
month old baby on my lap. So I don't know
gotcha.
if you can, or I can make you the host actually, because now we're already recording. So let me do that. Is that okay? Are you okay if I do that?
I think what I might need to do is just switch over to my other monitor and then I should be able to put up the slides that we had.
Let me see. I'll
Uh,
make you host. So you're now the host, and then oh, Joey, Andy said actually. Let me do this. Andy just says if I ask if you just share your screen, you don't even have to be the host. But we can just try it now. Let's see.
okay. I
If
think I
not,
might I might even like I, let me see. I think I'm honestly on a
do you need me? If you need me to do it, that's fine. I can do it.
I
Let
think I might need to do it.
share.
Just because of the device that I'm on right now.
Um,
But it's also not the end of the world. I would just need to like
I got
sign
you.
out, come back, and then do
All
it.
right, here we go.
Master of
Can
multitasking
you
here.
see that?
Yeah, I got it.
Is this it? It's just the two slides, right?
Yes,
Oh,
it
I was getting
is.
worried about nothing then. That's not a. I can manage two
Yeah, we
slides.
can do it without it potentially too, but looks like we got it.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
I'll
great.
mute myself, Joey, but I'll be paying attention. If you need anything, just shout.
Perfect. I'll just need you to click to the next one probably. Um, so thank you guys for all being here. That was an amazing presentation from Andy, similar to Ian, very similar to the type of work that we do. Big believers in the breath work, especially the vertical breathing and the shoulders, the tension that adds, and the signals it sends to the brain are things that we are teaching to kids every single day as well. So awesome to see a measurable way to work on that. That's not something that I've been familiar with, so that's amazing, and I'll definitely look into it more. What we want to talk about today is just a brief reintroduction to who we are, raise a little bit of awareness of mental health when it comes to golf, and maybe a couple of specific things, but we're going to keep it much more brief today. Again, I'm Joey. I work over at Riser and Tread. I'm the director of sports performance and recovery. We do mental performance coaching, similar to what Ian does, similar to what they're doing over at KOHR, and then seems like very similar to what Andy does as well. What we do that is a little bit different is we provide a clinical lens to that as well. So we do individual therapy, we do therapeutic groups, we do ADHD coaching as well. So, the reason that we're here and that I'm speaking to you today is, one, because we have a great relationship with KOHR. I worked at KOHR as a mental coach. Alex has been working at KOHR for a long time as a mental coach, as well as doing the clinical therapy that we both do now as well. The reason that we're here today is because KOHR cares about serving the whole athlete and helping to support your kids besides just on the golf course, besides just with their swing, and actually besides even just the mental part of their golf game, and trying to make sure that all the kids are supported in different aspects of their life as well. So I think I've said it before on these Zooms, Ian has said it many times, but that, if your life is kind of uneven, is you're going through the ups and downs and trials and tribulations of life, then it's going to impact you on the golf course as well. I think there's pretty much no getting around that. And I think that Andy would probably agree with that too, is that type of breathing, that fight or flight, that doesn't just happen over short putts. That happens during tests. That happens when you're trying to ask a girl out. That happens, during difficult social situations, or, in areas where you struggle, maybe if you have ADHD or something like that. So our aim at Riser and Tread is to be able to help support the core athletes in aspects that may be related to the golf course. We are able to do the one-on-one coaching, and we do work on a lot of that breath work stuff, and could potentially, work hand in hand with some of the technology that Andy is using and the coaching that KOHR is using to help athletes develop those routines, develop those mental skills to improve their golf. But really what is going to set us apart, and hopefully is going to make this the most complementary partnership, is our ability to form relationships with your kids, get your kids to have that other voice, that other source of support that, is not associated with evaluating them, with placing them in groups. I have no advice I could possibly give somebody about their golf swing, as some people in here could probably attest to. But what we can do is form a relationship with your kid, and maybe use this sports psych angle, use the mental skills coaching angle as a way to get them started with some sort of clinical support. I think I mentioned this on the last parent call as well, but some of you may have been waiting for, okay, when's the right opportunity to get my kid involved with some other form of support, some sort of therapy? Well, I think that Riser and Tread is a really good fit for that sort of thing. So Ian, my next slide has a video. I'm not sure if it will play, but it's actually the exact clip that Andy was talking about during his presentation from Rory's press conference. I should be able to.
I'm going to unmute.
Not showing up.
Because it might run through my speakers. So let's just see. Is this the one, Joey?
It is. I cannot see it currently. I just am seeing the background, unfortunately. Oh, there it is. Just showed up.
Ready? So if I click one more time, I reckon we might roll. All right?
Hopefully.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, it's just going to open another tab. And then, Ian, if it was Google Drive, it would go right to it. But could you skip to 1026 on the video? Look at us making it work.
There we go.
We're going to play for about a minute. But this is the...
Sorry, it's going to get hacked.
There are two reasons you hit.
Nerves manifest. What were the bodily sensations that you were feeling?
What tee?
First tee.
Oh, the first tee. Yeah, everything that you would, knot in your stomach. I haven't really had much of an appetite all day. Tried to force food down. yeah, your legs feel a little jelly-like, and it's those nerves that are natural, and they're all good things. If you weren't feeling like that, I think that's more of a problem than when you do feel them. But it's such a battle in your head of just trying to stay in the present moment and just trying to hit this next shot good and then hit the next shot good, and it just that's you know that was the battle today. My battle today was with myself. It wasn't with anyone else. At the end there, it was with Justin, but my battle today was with my mind and staying in the present. And I'd like to say that I did a better job of it than I did, but it was a struggle. But I got it over the line.
That's good, Ian.
Rory, congratulations, by the way.
Awesome.
I've stopped share, Joey, and now you'll just be, when you talk, you'll just be the main. Okay, perfect.
All good. So exactly the moment that Andy references in his talk stood out to me and a lot of members on my team as well. What I would just want to highlight from that for all the parents is his openness to talk about the anxiety that he feels, trying to normalize what that is like in a competition. And I'm sure anybody that was watching that final round could see the light that is shined on the mental aspect of golf. And that is something that we want to try to get our kids to be able to work on, that openness and that willingness to acknowledge that this is a struggle. Being a competitive athlete is a struggle. It's not always going to be easy. And look at Rory McIlroy. He put on in front of the entire world what it looks like to go through the ups and downs of a round, to deal with the pressure that, like Andy mentioned, can make you miss that 3-foot putt, that 5-foot putt on 18, makes you double bogey the first hole. And just normalize that this anxiety is something that we all go through. Unfortunately, I think that many of our kids that are in that teenage age, even below, and especially guys, are often unwilling to acknowledge that. And I think this is something that Rory has worked on for a long time he works with Bob Rotella, and he has that support person that he can talk to. So, not only on the golf course that anxiety is there, but if you saw his last putt and you saw his reaction, I have no doubt in my mind that this concept of winning the Grand Slam or finally breaking through and winning another major, there's no doubt in my mind that impacted him off the course as well. No doubt that has weighed on him and that has impacted his life off the course. And unfortunately, we see that a lot with athletes, where the pressure they put on themselves, their coaches put on them, whether it's newspapers or parents or other kids, that the life of an athlete is not easy. And you throw on top of that school and social life and other diagnoses that they might have, ADHD, learning disabilities, anything like that. These kids are often so overloaded. And our goal at Riser and Tread is try to give them another level of support of someone that can help them to be able to just have a different perspective on some of these things and help them ideally play their best golf through first living their best life. That's the main goal for us. And I know that's a huge goal at KOHR, and that's why we're here, is that, yeah, we want to play good golf. Yes, we want to have the mental skills and the good routines and the process to get better. We also want to make sure that we can have, a well-rounded person that has a good idea of who they are, that feels comfortable sharing with the important people in their life, whether that's us as the therapist or whether that's ideally you as the parents as well. So, I'm going to hand it off to Alex. He's going to talk a little bit more, and then we'll try to put a bow on it towards the end.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. So yes, as Ian and Joey had mentioned earlier, I had been working as a coach at KOHR for the past year or so, and recently transitioned to joining the team at Riser and Tread, which I think is actually, that in itself, I think is actually a good representation of the type of people who work at Riser and Tread, and also the great fit that our mutual partnership has. Because the people who work at Rising and Tread, we're very similar to the coaches at KOHR in regards to the way that we carry ourselves and the types of relationships that we have with our clients. And I say to clients all the time that the very first goal of our work together is to build our relationship and rapport, because it's so crucial to being able to do good things together and to make positive strides going forward. And we like to differentiate ourselves from like that stereotype of the therapist that a lot of people have in their minds, especially I feel like kids can have in their minds. I feel like that old guy with the beard sitting across from you and like analyzing you in in a stuffy environment or even like a hospital or something. Um, clinicians at Riser and Chet, we position ourselves as much more relaxed, much more casual, relatable, and similar to the way that kids relate and bond with coaches at KOHR through their shared passion with golf. Clinicians at Riser and Tread, we try to position ourselves less as like that counselor and really just more as that trusted person with common interests that can build that rapport and that positive relationship with our clients. And in my time working at KOHR, I was really able to see firsthand how passionate and deeply invested the KOHR program is in your kids as people, not just as golfers. And the partnership with Riser and Tread only really further reiterates that mission of KOHR, that by offering that connection to work with a clinician here, that's able to provide your kids with that one-on-one support, and also have that clinical eye to be able to to keep an eye on any potential deeper rooted concerns, and just to kind of close out, I'm a firm believer in sport participation and offering that environment for kids to learn life lessons and skills that they can take with them, for as they grow older and as they go on to do bigger and better things. And the impact and takeaways from our work together, at Riser and Shred, with our clients, it's universal and it extends far beyond the golf course. A lot of the conversations that we have with clients, just like your kids, they may take place in more of a kind of like that sport context, but zooming out to the big picture, these are really just like foot in the door conversations. And once that door is open, we hope to make great strides that carry them into being the best versions of themselves as people, not just the best golfers.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really well said, Alex. I think that's why this partnership makes a lot of sense. KOHR clearly cares a ton about the people that are involved here, whether it's the parents or the kids. And, I've been working in sports for a while now with athletes at all different levels, D1, professional, youth. And there aren't really a lot of organizations that do put this much thought into those sort of things outside of the technical and the physical and the outcomes of things. So I think that's why we're uniquely suited to be able to support KOHR in this. And like Alex said, usually that sport angle that we can provide is a really awesome way to get a kid to start seeing someone, to start opening up. And then, our eye is always on, the bigger picture, some of the deeper meanings. And, as parents, I know that you're worried about the golf score, but you may be worried about grades. You may be worried about social life. You may be worried about anxiety, depression, anything like that. And with the relationship that we have with the core coaches, hopefully that can be, that open communication can really help to serve making sure that your kids are best supported as possible. So that's what we had for today. Just wanted to kind of bring that awareness to, hey, look at this world famous best golfer in the world. Look at the struggle that he's gone through. You can't expect a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old to be able to necessarily manage that with a stiff upper lip. So we're here to provide any support we possibly can. And hopefully we'll be back soon to do some parent training, something that might help people with how do you manage having an athlete that is in really high level of competition. How do you manage an athlete that is a perfectionist? How do you best support your kids on and off the course so that they feel safe to go out there, take some risks, maybe even fail and know that you guys will still be there for them, which I'm sure that all of you are doing, but we can provide a little bit of that clinical insight into what we can do for that. So hopefully that will be something that we're able to do in the future. And thanks for having us. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joey. So yes, all right, let me just see if I can get one sec. So thanks, Joey, and thanks to Andy. I've worked in the golf industry for like, I don't know, 15 years, maybe longer. And often I've found it a place that is there's a lot of ego in failed male athletes a lot of the time. And I don't want any ego at Core Golf. I think we do a very good job supporting your children, but there's certain areas that if we can form partnerships with absolute experts, I'm not a clinician, neither is any of the coaches. I am aware of some of the stuff, but at certain times when red flags are prominent amongst teenage girls or teenage boys, we have a duty to pass it to experts who've studied this on a deeper level. Um, I teach breathing techniques. I do a pretty good job of it. I'm no expert. Andy is now dedicating his life to this. I guess there's a little bit in me as a director of a program, jack of all trades, master of none. So I'm going to try and bring in the masters and the very, very high end professionals to help and support your children and help and support the mission of um, getting them to achieve their full potential on and off the golf course. So we're good at what we do at KOHR, but we definitely need support with expertise. It's not often that I would ask or suggest additional investment. But on these two occasions, I think potentially having your child go and see someone at Riser and Tread, if it's something that's in the back of your mind, is great. I think having them invest in one of the belts and getting into 10 minutes breathing a day and being able to measure this is a great replacement for Instagram or Snapchat and can be a very healthy habit. So that's why we've done this. And again, we're just trying to help everyone and help this community be the best they can possibly be. So that's it for this evening. I will hang around if parents have any questions. I want to thank Joey, thank Alex, thank Andy, and I'll stay on here for the next 10 minutes until everybody has left. So thank you guys for giving up your time, and also thank you to the people who watched the recording.
Thanks, Ian.